All right. Ooh, I can see people showing up. Karen, you're in South Africa. Awesome. Shit, what time is it there? All right, let me start the Insta, y'all. Here we go. Welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. Pura vida. I just got back from Costa Rica. I wish I was there longer because going for like 2 fucking seconds was a lot of travel. My original ticket was pretty good. It was like Anchorage to LA, LA to San Jose in Costa Rica. And then they changed that shit to like Anchorage to Seattle, Seattle to LA, LA to Costa Rica. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it added like hours, like half a day of travel. So anyway, I am back in Alaska and it is cold and snowy, which is very pretty, but it's not as cold as it was like last week where it was like minus shit. It was crazy. So anyway, I'm stoked. Next week, we're going to Hawaii for a couple months. So I'm super excited to be down there again too. Hey, Janice. Hey, Shani. Hey, Gracie. Kim, what's up? Okay. Where's my dog? I wanted to show her to you. Lamu, did you not want to hang out with me? She's usually right by my feet. She's so cute today with her little Ewok face. If she comes in, I'll show her to you. All right, y'all. So today we're going to talk about how to live in polarity. And what the fuck does that mean? All right. Well, let's talk about it. Okay. So when we are living in polarity, what I mean by that is that as a human being, we all have these sort of contrasting aspects of ourselves, right? Like people often are like, well, I am like this. I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert or I am not a very sexual person, or I am a very physical person, or I like the outdoors, or I'm a city person. Like we like to put people in these boxes, but really, as humans, we are complex creatures, right? So as humans, what I have found, and I don't know if you found this in yourself, but what I found is that as humans, we are on a continuum. Right. And some days I might feel like this side of the continuum, and other days I might feel like more on that side of the continuum. Right. So, other dichotomies, there were seemingly, not actually, but seemingly incompatible aspects of our complex being could be religion and sex, discipline versus wildness, right? Security versus freedom. I know that's huge for my people because they're freedom junkies, but they're also like, but I kind of want to make a bunch of money and have some sense of security, but I really don't want to be told what to do. And I want to be able to do what I want, but I want to know how my income's coming in. So we have this polarity, right? So there's dichotomies everywhere, right? It's in nature. It's yin and yang. Let me, that's why I brought this. I'm going to do some drawing, which is not my forte, but I'm going to do it for you anyway. Okay. So I think you can see this. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with this drawing, right, there's yin and yang. So it's a Taoist image, right? Tai Chi is also the other word. And so it symbolizes how there are these polarities, but that are also part of a continuum. And each of the polarities actually hold aspects of its opposite within it. This, I think, is so much more accurate than are you this or that, right? Than this black and white thinking, right? This polarized thinking. This was the first tattoo I ever got because when I was 18, I was like, I want to get a tattoo, but I know a lot of people regret their tattoos. So like, what do I know is true at 18 that I know I won't change my mind about it? Like when I'm old and wrinkly and my tattoos getting covered by my sagging skin or something, right? And so I got the yin yang symbol. And, if you can see here, the darkness has the light within it and the light has the dark within it. And at its extreme, as the darkness is growing, it morphs into the light. And similarly, as the light reaches its extreme, it morphs into the darkness. And so, we all have all of these aspects, the yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine, these dichotomies within us. And if we are one at one and more than the other at different times, or most of the time, we still have the seed of the other within us, right? Yet our culture tends to ask us to choose one aspect of ourselves or the other, right? Because we're a culture of polarities, especially political right now. Who feels like shit's polarized right now, right? But I think it's a sign of other aspects of our culture that tend to polarize us, right? It's often considered hypocritical to stand with one foot in each of these contrasting spaces, right? We're encouraged and we're forced to choose one or the other, right? And it was so interesting. Like I was on the airplane flying to Costa Rica and I sat next to who I will refer to as the kind Republican. And y'all, we disagreed on fucking everything, but we listened respectfully. There were a few areas where I was like, I can see why you think that way. And he was like, I could see that. I'm open to that. You know, we were talking about privilege, and he was a white male who didn't think he was privileged because he grew up poor. So there was some action going on there talking about that. And we had just such a respectful conversation. And you know where we agreed? Where we agreed was that the world needs to be more kind. Polarities with a bit of the opposite in each other, right? And so yet we're often we're told that we have to choose one or the other. Or like, you know, people will say, oh, you're so hypocritical. How can you be a Buddhist who eats meat? That's so hypocritical. How can you be all about freedom? Then tell me that I should have more discipline in my life. Or how can you claim to, this isn't just specific to me, but these are things I hear. How can you claim to prioritize your children's security, yet you want to get a divorce or quit your job or something, right? People are like, I don't get it. Those things are so different. But what I want to offer is that we are complex and that we need this complexity. It's part of who we are. It's part of nature, right? So oftentimes when we haven't integrated our polarities, we have a lot of cognitive dissonance and we have a lot of tension within us, right? And so, sorry, I'm trying to just level out that camera there. So one example I have is I was doing a wilderness quest. I'm going to change some details for privacy reasons, but I was doing a wilderness fast, sorry, and there was this beautiful person in our group who identified as a man who was desperately torn between two really powerful forces in their life, right? One was of him as an influential, prominent community leader and ethical role model, like some would say even like a spiritual teacher of sorts within a fairly really disciplined tradition. And the other was as a sensual, bisexual, polyamorous lover that was way into erotica, right? And he simply couldn't see how both could exist simultaneously. Two very potent parts of his life. And he saw them as completely opposite and divergent realities, right? And maybe you do as well. But his soul was fraught with the thought of having to let one go. And the reason he thought he had to let one go is because he felt so hypocritical being both at the same time, out of integrity. How can I be both at the same time? That's not in integrity. So he saw them as totally contradicting and incompatible, and his suffering was palpable, right? And all of us may spend some time in a similar space than we may realize, right? Maybe you like to look like you eat really healthfully and you really value that. But then every now and then you hit up Taco Bell on a road trip, or maybe not on a road trip. You just drive by and you swing on in or something, right? And then we feel shame and we want to hide it. We post our salad, but we don't post the Taco Bell Taco Supremes or whatever, right? Or you post all your on social, like about all your time in the mountains and or doing yoga and stand-up paddle boards or something. But then when you binge 8 hours of Netflix and pizza, whatever, like that doesn't go on social or something, right? Or maybe we love our family and we feel that our soul will wither and die if we don't go back to school to study that thing we've always wanted to study, or go on that month-long retreat in India, or travel the world, right? Which means less time with your family. Or maybe like me, you try your best and help others show up in the world in a way that's in alignment with their values, and wanting people and helping them to be more kind, right? Die with no regrets, say yes, right? And yet you have moments of explosive rage and anger when your needs get neglected and you feel ashamed. And there's a tension between wanting to take the high road and be kind and accepting and giving, and the other side that wants to fight like fuck for your well-being and your needs, right? And while I may talk about it on like Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday or on podcasts, oftentimes many people choose to be quiet about it and not talk about it because we feel shame or embarrassment, right? So why do we resist the truth of this contrast existing, the truth of these different aspects of ourselves, right? Because being and it's boring, because like being predictable is kind of boring, right? And we are not boring, right? So I want to emphasize here that integrity is not about moral perfection, right? So one definition of integrity is, quote, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles and moral uprightness, but another, the root integer, the state of being whole and undivided. And look, it's the attempts at dividing who we are into pieces and then neglecting them that tear us apart, right? So it's ignoring our complexity and diversity that actually harms our integrity, right? Our ability to be whole. We all have so many parts of ourselves, right? And I don't mean like multiple personality diagnosis or dissociative disorder, right? In terms of what it's called now. I mean that like in nature, we as humans have contrasting parts of ourselves, like in nature. It's a truth, diverse aspects of ourselves. So I want to invite us all to spend more time becoming whole instead of trying to pick which parts of ourselves we decide is valid or not, right? And instead allow ourselves to be complex and to have polarities and not to cast away these other parts of ourselves, right? So here I want to introduce the concept of the mandorla, another drawing. So, it's kind of like a Venn diagram, all right? So we've got two circles that overlap, right? So a mandorla means almond in Italian, almond shape here. Okay, so you may see this like in ancient texts and references. It's often used for contrasting concepts, especially in the older texts for like the earth versus the heavens, or, the more transcendent aspects. And then there's an area where they overlap, right? And so a mandorla is kind of like, where do these areas of contrast overlap? Where do they dance, right? So this is where the dance between the contrast occurs, right? And so instead of being like, oh, it's either good or bad, we're like, wait a minute, there's an area of overlap here in who we are and in what we value and what we want to do, right? Because, other examples could be like, so we have divine or worldly, right? Feminine or masculine, introvert or extrovert, whatever these classic terms are, good or evil in some traditions, right? Pure or impure, right? But that is not how most humans roll, right? So we can find ourselves in tension between poles, and that tension only feels shitty because we're often told we can't be both. I mean, thank goodness there is now more acceptance, like with gender, of people being more fluid, right? And that is only one example of what is possible when we allow ourselves to accept all of our parts and welcome all of our parts. If someone pretends that they are all fucking love and light and have no rage or anger, guess how that comes up? So we see spiritual bypassing, right? Where it's like, oh, we're all one and what's the big deal? It's all about love in the end and we don't actually exist. And it also comes up in shadow work. Shadow is what we're not aware of. And when we are ignoring the polar opposite, that is where it shows up and surprises us. The people that get drunk and then all of a sudden they're raging and it's like, where the fuck did that come from? Shadow. or people that do shit and deny that it has any impact on other people or completely forget that they did something, right? So it's important that we integrate this, all aspects of ourselves, right? So in the podcast, I talk about in detail an activity you can do to help integrate these two parts, right? So if like first, like you can think about something that you feel a contrast between, like I want to be free, but I also want to have a home, but I can't pick where I should live because then that would give up my freedom and my spontaneity, right? Or I want financial freedom and security. I hate having to worry about how I'm going to make money, but I abhor that kind of security of choosing a job that then I have to like do what someone tells me or whatever, right? Like we think I have to choose one or the other. So think of something where you feel that pull, that kind of cognitive dissonance about these two aspects. And you can do this activity inside or outside. You can like draw it physically with like in the sand or in the dirt, or you can use rocks or leaves or something or twigs. Or you could do it in your room, like you have two areas of your room and you imagine where they overlap. And I go into detail on this on the podcast, but what you can do is you fully embody one side and you advocate for that other side. Like, no, 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 it's all about being free. Freedom is number one. You can't buy time. You can't buy freedom. Like this is the shit. And then you go to the other side. Oh, so how free are you going to be when you don't have a house and you're fucking like begging people to give you money because you don't have a job and you don't have any income? That doesn't sound very free to me. It sounds like you're on like, so you go back and forth and arguing for one side or the other. Eventually you will get exhausted and you will land here in the mandorla where you can feel they're actually not mutually exclusive. They're actually not polar opposites. There is a place where they dance and they intersect. And that, my friends, is where it's sexy and juicy. And that's where I want you to live. I want you to live at the intersection. Yeah. Right. So if you feel like it's clear that you can choose one or the other, that's not true oppositional aspects of you. That's not for this activity. This is where, when you start out, really thinking that they can't both exist at the same time. All right. So I want you to go to the podcast, have a listen to it, totally grok like what the mandorla activity is. And I'd love for you to do it. And then ask me questions in the Rebel Buddhist Facebook group. If you're listening to this somewhere else and you're not in that group, go to rebelbuddhist.com and then you can download the training kit. You'll get access to the Facebook group. It'll be awesome. So you can ask me questions in there for whatever comes up. Yes, now live in the mandorla. Exactly. Living in the mandorla. This is not Mandalorian Star Wars shit. It's not mandala. This is the mandorla in the almond, living in there. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna peace out because I have your multi-passionate coach here. I'm on some like national committee to advise the government on rural healthcare. How random is that? Not really, if you know me. So I will see y'all next week. Okay. Oh, and if you haven't joined Freedom School yet, we have our retreat, our virtual retreat coming up. Half-day virtual retreat next week. So you should join now, join freedomschool.com. Go check it out. Come join us on the retreat. We're going to do our year in review. It's going to be awesome sauce. Okay. And we also have our live retreat happening next year in Alaska in June. So that's another bonus, a free virtual retreat. So I wanted to tell you about that. So go check it out. Okay. And yes, the next Adventure Mastermind, thanks for asking, Kim, that enrollment opens in January. So keep an eye out for it, okay? Okay, y'all. Bye. Mwah. Ciao, ciao.